Oh, hi, Mark. All right. Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is directed by Sean S. Cunningham, written by Victor Miller, starring Adrian King, Kevin Bacon, and Betsy Palmer. That is the only movie in the world that I could ever do that with, because I know Friday the 13th. I don't know most movies that well. Not to mention Betsy Palmer and Kevin Bacon are fairly big names. By the way, stay a little bit. Okay. Anyway, I tried to find a Friday the 13th shirt in my closet. Jason Lives. This is the best I got. And to you guys, it just looks like a shitty tie-dye shirt that's worn out. And it is worn out. Make no mistake, this shirt is more worn out than a hooker's vagina. Alright? What I'm saying is, it's been through the ringer. Anyway. So Friday the 13th. But what is there to say about this movie? I mean, I'm sure everyone said a billion things about it. But, you know, this movie, for me, helped kick off my love of slasher movies, which is a pretty big deal for me, because I now am a huge slasher fan. If I just look right there, right now, I see 3 rows of just slasher movies. DVDs and Blu-rays, and then that's not even all my slasher movies. I have more in box sets and stuff like that. So, this movie helped kick that off. I watched this movie way back in the day. I was probably too damn young to be watching Friday the 13th, but I watched it over at my brother's house. And I didn't know anything about the movie. I asked him, "Is that the movie with the guy with the hockey mask?" I didn't even know Jason's name. Because I was so ignorant to the horror genre. I really was. It was all so very foreign to me. But it all fascinated me. You know, back in the day, before I even started watching horror movies, my sister lived with us for a little bit when I was a kid, and she had VHS tapes, and I remember I would just go sit in front of her little her little movie shelf, and I would just stare at the VHS tapes. I would stare at the horror VHSs and just kind of picture what would be in those movies, because I was rather sheltered to horror films when I was a kid, which is really suckish. I really wish I grew up in a more permissive kind of environment to horror movies. But no, my parents didn't like horror movies. Just, they didn't want nothing to do with them. I don't even think they own a horror movie. They own The Sixth Sense. If you can really call that a horror movie. I know my dad likes The Sixth Sense, but I've never really liked that movie. Anyway, and so I would watch horror movies mostly when I was at other people's houses. Finally, when I turned 13, my mom had bought me a horror film because I asked her if she would. It was PG-13. It wasn't rated R or anything. I wasn't allowed to watch rated R till I was about 16. But so when I would go over to other people's houses, it would be horror movies, you know? I'm going to turn this off. I've been speaking rather quietly, and I hope you guys can hear me, but you know, so when I would go to over to other people's houses, I would just watch horror movies there, you know? Went to my buddy's house, watched The Unborn, watched The Descent, And, of course, Friday the 13th was a really big franchise that I would start to watch at other people's houses. This first Friday the 13th, I saw at my brother's. This was the only Friday the 13th I saw at his house. But I'm glad that I did. Because I don't know that I would have gone and checked out the rest of them had I not just watched this first one. And this was one of the first, like, old horror films I had seen, like, from the 80s. I think most of the horror films I had seen to this point were from the 2000s, you know, just because that's kind of what was popular at the time, because it was the 2000s, it was the late 2000s, and so, you know, I ended up seeing a lot of newer horror films, because especially among younger crowds, older horror movies weren't really all that popular. You know, when you're a younger crowd, you probably watch movies from this generation. But I remember after this movie, I would go over to one of my other buddies' houses, and we would watch all the Friday the 13th movies on Netflix. I think we saw up to part 8 on Netflix, which, yeah, we would watch at least a Friday the 13th movie every time I came over to his house. I don't speak to that guy anymore, but back in the day, we watched Friday the 13th. Anyway. So let's actually get into the movie, shall we? So, Friday the 13th. It opens with 2 camp counselors making macaroni up in the attic. If you don't know what making macaroni means, I don't mean that they're actually making the pasta macaroni. It's a euphemism for having sex. They're having sex up in the attic of one of the cabins. And then there's a bunch of other camp counselors downstairs. Milk and honey on the other side. Singing that song. I have no idea what that song is. I really like that song. Oh, like, I'm gonna just be totally honest. I really like that song. Every single time I watch Friday the 13th, that song just relaxes me. That opening happens. I'm like, oh my god, that's relaxing. Like, I want to be there. I want to be there just so I can take a nap on the floor while they're singing that. Am I weird? Yeah, I'm weird. But I don't really give a shit. And then we have our killer goes up the stairs, and the guy in the situation immediately starts tucking his shit back in his pants. We weren't doing nothing, I swear. We was just messing around. I feel like that was a really poor choice of words, you know? But we were just messing around. Sure were. You sure were. And, you know, it's funny because you know that the killer is Mrs. Voorhees. You know that the killer is this old lady. I mean, obviously, spoiler alert for Friday the 13th. This movie came out in 1980. If you haven't seen Friday the 13th yet, what are you doing watching my video? Genuinely, first of all, out of all the Friday the 13th reviews on YouTube, what are you doing watching my Friday the 13th review if you haven't seen Friday the 13th? This is some pretty like, you would have had to search the bowels of YouTube just to scrape up the excrement that is my Friday the 13th review on YouTube. So I don't know what you're doing here if you haven't seen Friday the 13th. So just keep in mind, this is a spoiler review of this movie that is what? 40-something years old, right? I don't know. I'm really bad at math in my head. Yeah, about 40 years old. 41 years old, actually. But, yeah. So I think I should be allowed to talk spoilers in here. So Mrs. Voorhees is the killer. I know that there's just a bunch of you in the audience going, "Oh man, you ruined it for me." No, probably not, right? Anyway, it's just amusing to me that we know Mrs. Voorhees is the killer, and so it's this old lady that walks up the stairs, and he's like, "We were just messing around." Like, that old lady doesn't know what you were doing up there. Oh, man. And then she stabs him immediately. He goes down. Stabbed in the pancreas. I don't really know if he was stabbed in the pancreas. I just enjoy the word pancreas, so I use it frequently. Anyway, and then his girlfriend starts screaming and backing up and throwing boxes at Mrs. Voorhees. Now, if you've ever wondered what not to do when you're being murdered, throw empty boxes at the murderer. I would venture to say that's probably not the move, guys. I would venture to say probably not the move. You know, it'd be one thing if those boxes were like full of glasses or full of, just heavy shit. If those boxes were like, one was labeled like bowling balls, yeah, go ahead, throw that box at Mrs. Voorhees. But all of these boxes were so light, like she could have just, they would have fallen out of the sky, landed on the floor with the absolute utmost gentleness. No one would have been able to hear that shit downstairs. Man, absolutely, these boxes were packed full of feathers. Maybe pillows or extra comforters. Like, that's at the heaviest, because no fucks were given that day about the boxes that were being thrown. And so, as a result, of course, the other woman ends up being stabbed by Mrs. Voorhees' buck knife. We don't see that kill. That is an off-screen kill, because what ends up happening is Mrs. Voorhees goes to stab her, and it freeze frames on her face, screaming. She's like, and so then we cut to, oh man, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, because keep in mind, I did not watch this before I started this review, because I want the rest of the day to just watch Friday the 13th movies. So I just kind of decided to record this before I even started, because it is Friday the 13th. Happy Friday the 13th, guys. But yeah, because I've seen this movie a trillion times. You would think my memory of it would be perfect by now. It's not. I don't quite remember what it cuts to. Oh, that's right. It's Annie. Annie is backpacking through, I don't know what that town's called. Crystal Lake Town? Crystal Lake Town in New Jersey. And she goes into this bar, and everyone's made pretty uncomfortable by the fact that she's going to Crystal Lake. And it's funny to me, because at this point, not much has happened at Crystal Lake, right? Oh, wait, no. I guess there is some stuff. There was some stuff. Jason drowned. A couple of teenagers got murdered. And then I think it was the trucker that ends up giving her a ride there, had said something about problems with the water, like the drinking water, like it was poisoning people or something like that. Anyway, basically, the whole town's accepted that this place has a death curse by now, which I find hilarious, because there are 7 more movies with that same setting where people just kept coming back. But, at the end of the day, you gotta do what you gotta do to have fun as a teenager around Crystal Lake, right? So anyway, Annie gets in a truck with this guy who definitely cops a feel of her ass. It was a nice one. What can I say? It was a nice one. That being said, it's not like he squoze it. He didn't squeeze it. It's debatable whether he was trying to cop a feel or not. Alright? I've seen other people's reviews on YouTube where they're like, that guy is definitely a creep. He was definitely copping a feel. Because, like, he wasn't creepy the rest of the time. I do get the general gist that he was just helping her up into the truck. Like, because it was a push, you know? It was a push. It was a push on her ass, but it was a push, you know? So it's debatable whether he was copping a feel or not. I personally don't really think he was. But, you know, the opportunity was there for a joke, and so I just took it. Because he was a fairly nice guy, the rest of the ride. But anyway. So, he tries to warn her of the death curse. She don't listen. He's like, alright, this is as far as I can take you. Alrighty. She gets out. Then a Jeep pulls up. Gets into the Jeep. And immediately, we don't see the driver of the Jeep. So we're like, oh, okay, so that's the killer. Which, by the way, isn't this one of the first movies to do that POV thing? Where it's the point of view of the killer? Which, gotta say, that's pretty, I was gonna call it innovative. I don't know that innovative is the right word. Yeah, I mean, kind of, but pretty influential throughout the horror genre, especially the slasher genre. From there, you know, a lot of people say that Halloween is, you know, like the most influential slasher movie of all time. I think Friday the 13th is probably just as influential. You know, because Halloween came out. Ultimately, what Halloween was, that was something heavily inspired by Black Christmas, I would say. And sure, I do think that Friday the 13th took its inspirations from Halloween, but I think even more so than Halloween, I think Friday the 13th more so took inspiration from a film that came out in 1981, or not 1981, holy shit, 1971. 1981 would have been a year after Friday the 13th. Came out in 1971, called Bay of Blood, or as I like to call it, because it's the coolest title of all time, Twitch of the Death Nerve. Like I said, Twitch of the Death Nerve. Coolest friggin' title out there. But anyway, I would argue that Twitch of the Death Nerve is probably the first true slasher movie ever made. And the way it plays out is very much so like a Friday the 13th film. Now, obviously there's a lot in Twitch of the Death Nerve that isn't Friday the 13th-esque, like the fact that there's not just one killer. Like, everyone's killing everyone, and to figure out who's killing who is a mind fuck. But like you couldn't do it if you tried. But you know, the setting, the kills, the way in which the kills are presented, just the fact Twitch of the Death Nerve was very much so like a body count sort of movie. Sorry guys, I'm getting over either allergies or a cold. I'm not 100% sure which it is. But anyway, and so, if anything, first of all, I think Twitch of the Death Nerve is more influential than Halloween. And I think Friday the 13th was more so influenced by Twitch of the Death Nerve. And actually, if you look throughout the Friday the 13th franchise, there's a bunch of kills that are plucked right out of Twitch of the Death Nerve. Most notably, the bed kill, the skewer in Friday the 13th, right out of Twitch of the Death Nerve. So anyway, and again, you'll probably hear that movie more commonly referred to as Bay of Blood. I like Twitch of the Death Nerve because that is the coolest title that has ever been thought up. Anyway, so I do think that Friday the 13th influenced the slasher genre, like, a lot. And that's one of the things that you end up seeing a lot in future slasher movies, is that POV of the killer. And so anyway, Annie's riding in the passenger seat with Mrs. Voorhees. And this is an issue that I have had with this movie for a while. Don't get me wrong, I love Friday the 13th. But okay, so Annie bails out because she realizes that whoever this is in the front seat isn't taking her to Camp Crystal Lake, because they just keep it going after the turn off to get to Camp Crystal Lake. And so she does what any good God-fearing American would do, and she just yeets herself out of the side of the Jeep, which is all well and good. She starts running through the forest, and for whatever reason, she feels the need to take a break behind a tree. Well, lo and behold, the killer finds her, slits her throat. Pretty cool effect, but this is a problem I have. That was a man's hand. That was so 100% a man's hand that it's not even debatable. That's a man's hand. Mrs. Voorhees got some manly hands, because that is a dude's hand. That is a dude's hand, and that's not even the outfit that Mrs. Voorhees wears. The hand that slits Annie's throat, pretty sure it's wearing like a flannel shirt, like a flannel red and black and white shirt. Mrs. Voorhees is wearing like a light blue sweater. So yeah, that was a bit of an issue, but obviously I'm willing to overlook it. That is an issue, though. It's a silly issue, which obviously I think they were trying to get you to think that Steve Christy was the killer, because Steve Christy, not only did he always wear flannel, which actually, that could be a theory on its own, that Steve Christy was the killer for that first kill, or for a couple of the kills, and Mrs. Voorhees was just another killer. Silly theory. I don't buy into it. I think Mrs. Voorhees is supposed to be the killer the whole time, but obviously they're pulling very hard to get you to think Steve Christy is the killer, because he actually has the same exact Jeep as Mrs. Voorhees, which is just what a coinkydink. So anyway, we cut to the camp. They're all doing camp things. There's a guy in his underwear with a headdress on, smacking his mouth and screaming and dancing around. I don't remember if that's right away or if that's after a little bit of movie, but God. That's, you know what, that's entertaining. It's just funny. Then there's this cop that comes up. I love that cop. I love that cop. Rides up. Can it, Tonto? Like, I don't know, or Squanto. I don't know why he was so mad at that guy. I guess it was because he was in his underwear, right? Like, we won't stand for no weirdness over here. What you been smoking, son? Don't smoke, causes cancer. Don't play stupid with me, you know what I'm talking about. The hash, the grass, Colombian something or other. Yeah, I like that cop. I like that scene in general. Very funny stuff. No weird people over here, right? Anyway. So, obviously, Annie hasn't arrived yet. They're talking about how the cook hasn't arrived. Annie was the cook. And then, Mr. Snake is offed. I'm sure I'm jumbling up the events. But, There is a snake in the film. Unfortunately, this is one of the few things I don't really like about this movie. That being said, I can get over it. It's a snake. You know, it was still pretty damn unnecessary. The only time you'll hear me say, I don't really give a shit, is if it's a spider. Like, if a spider is smashed on camera, I don't care. I do that on the reg. You know, I smash spiders. Who doesn't? Spiders are nasty little terrifying things. Snakes kind of are too, but it was super unnecessary what they did to the snake. And I even heard it was some guy's pet snake. See, that's bullshit right there. That's bullshit right there. And I don't know why they did it or why they would have done it, but yeah, no, they actually killed that guy's pet snake. They cut its head off with a machete. That is insanely fucked. So that is one part of Friday the 13th that I will say that I don't like. It's not something that stops me from watching the movie. I watch it anyway. It's not like Cannibal Holocaust where they're like cutting monkeys' faces in half or something like that, but it is still unnecessary. But anyway, then we have a little scene at the lake, and you know, it's all these scenes at the lake in all the Friday the 13th movies I really enjoy. They're kind of part of the reason that these are some of my comfort movies, is just because before the killings start to happen, even a lot of the time while the killings are happening, they're just having fun. They're just having fun. They're doing normal camp shit. And, you know, it seems like a lot of fun, minus the psycho. You know, we get that famous, well, I don't know if it's a famous line, but it's a line that I always remember. You were a kind of ice cream, what would you be? Rocky Road. And she pushes him into the lake. I don't know what that means. Why would you be Rocky Road? Who knows? I feel like if I was a kind of ice cream, I would be salted caramel. Just because I'm typically salty as shit, but I have the capacity to be sweet. Anyway. And then I guess we'll just get into the kills. Well, actually, we do have one more scene that I really like. I really like the scene where Kevin Bacon and his girlfriend. I used to remember like everyone's name in this movie. Kevin Bacon's name is Jack, right? Kevin Bacon is Jack. I don't remember his girlfriend's name. Was it Rose? Was that her name? Jack and Rose? Shit, I don't remember. Anyway, two are out there, sitting on a log, and I really like this scene. The storm's rolling in, and Jack's girlfriend, Kevin Bacon's girlfriend, is sitting there recounting a recurring nightmare that she had as a kid. And Kevin Bacon is like, hey, this is no dream. Come on, we're gonna get soaked. There's a way that, it's a certain way that he says soaked. It sounds kind of Canadian. It's like, come on, we're gonna get soaked. I really appreciate it. But then I also really appreciate the introduction of the storm, because this comes back in all the other Friday the 13th movies. I don't know if it happens in all of them, but I know it happens in a lot of them. It happens in part 2. I think it happens in part 3. I don't remember if it happens in part 4 enough or not. I haven't really seen that movie enough times. I don't know if it happens in part 5, but it definitely happens in part 6. I don't remember. I think there's a windstorm of some kind in part 7, and then in part 8 there's a storm, which kind of gives the idea that, which obviously in this movie it's not Jason that's doing the killing, it's his mother, but it is connected in some way to the legend of Jason Voorhees. it kind of gives the idea, which obviously that wasn't the intention for this first movie, but as the movies go on, every time Jason comes around, there's a storm. It kind of gives the idea that Jason is some kind of force of nature, just kind of this thing that can't be stopped. Jason is a natural disaster as a human being, and I love that. Storm comes in every time Jason shows up. But, like I said, it's not Jason in this movie, so... In this movie, it's just because they wanted a storm. And... So, let's see. What was the first kill? What is the first kill in this movie? I don't know. I guess we'll just talk about them out of order. First of all, let's talk about Kevin Bacon's death. I mean, I know that's way down the line, but that is like the best kill in this movie. The arrow through the throat, great stuff. Great stuff. It looks great. Just absolutely awesome. Absolutely. And then there's Kevin Bacon's girlfriend's death. She catches an axe to the face. The two of them probably have the strongest kills in this movie. Other than that, there's a couple of slit throats, I think. We don't really see the one lady's death. I don't remember her name either. She was the lady who plays strip poker with Adrian King and the other guy. But anyway, we didn't really see her death. I think we're led to believe that she was shot with an arrow or something. But she's through. But I think I only say that because she was in the archery range. But she's thrown through the window later, and it's her corpse. So we know she's dead for sure. And so anyway. Oh yeah, Steve Christy. He gets stabbed. Which Steve Christy is weirdo. Hitting on this chick who's like 20 and it's like 40. Which, to be fair, I don't know. Do whatever the fuck you want. Do whatever you want. But he was also her boss, which makes it weird. Anyway, whatever. Besides the point, let's move on. So, anywho, Mrs. Voorhees shows up conveniently after everyone's dead. And Adrian King sees her. She's like, they're all dead. We gotta get out of here. He'll kill you too. She's like, oh, my child, I'm not afraid. And instantly you get weird vibes from this chick. My dear, I'm not afraid. No, he won't kill me. I wonder why. And then she explains to her son drowned in this lake, while camp counselors weren't paying any attention to him. They were off having filthy sex. I think the filthy sex thing's from the Ice Nine Kills song and not as much from Friday the 13th. Yeah, no, that's an Ice Nine Kills thing, not a Friday the 13th. But anyway, counselor's off having intercourse. Jason dies. And so the final chase scene starts. This is a great chase scene, other than the fact it's... You know, a lot of people harp on final girls when they do this thing where it's like they'll injure the killer and then they'll run away. They're like, man, if I was in that situation, I would just stab her one more time, make sure she was dead. It's like, no, you probably wouldn't. And if you did do that, you would go to prison. I think the reason that final girls do this a lot is because once you've stopped the attacker, in a self-defense scenario, if you have stopped the attack, you are now safe. You run away. If you kill that person, that is now murder. You have now committed a murder. Which is kind of probably why a lot of final girls... Now, that being said, I still have a problem with Laurie Strode in Halloween. She just sucked. She sucked at what she did. Just because she would, like, jab Michael in the eye, and she was like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm cool. Stab him in the side of the neck with a knitting needle. Oh, yeah, no. Obviously, he's dead. I should just go upstairs and pretend like everything's okay now. Anyway, we're not reviewing Halloween, but that shit bothers me. But in this movie, she was actually doing some substantial stuff. She would smack Mrs. Voorhees in the head with a baseball bat. Mrs. Voorhees would go down. She's in a puddle of her own blood. Okay, safe to assume that she's dead or she is unconscious, and unconscious enough to where, yeah, you could probably get away now. Like, by all means, get out of here. You know, like, I would say that's a pretty safe bet. Like, she's either dead or severely injured because she is just leaking blood from out her head. You know, and I mean, Adrienne King in this final fight scene, she's not fucking around. When she seeks to injure her attacker, she seeks to injure her attacker. You know, she's smacking her with an oar. She's smacking her with a baseball bat. And, you know, she does a couple of things that's kind of stupid. Like, I think she throws a couple of things at her that were super unsubstantial too. Like, she throws a couple boxes, just like the first chick, which, I don't know, I feel like y'all would have learned by now. But, the boxes are not a substantial weapon to defend yourself from being murdered. You just keep that in mind in case of a home invasion. Unless you have any boxes full of bowling balls laying around, don't use boxes as a weapon to defend yourself. But anyway, and she grabs a gun. She tries to find the ammo for the gun. She can't find the ammo because it's in a locked drawer. But, you know, she aims the gun at her. She's trying to scare her off. She's doing her best. And then, of course, they get down to the lake. This is where I think she hits Mrs. Voorhees with an oar. The oar snaps in half. Mrs. Voorhees tries to stab her with the oar, which at this point it's like, yeah, no, this bitch is crazy. And you know she's crazy too, because this is something stupid. It's always been so stupid, but it's always been so, like, ingrained in my head. When Mrs. Voorhees went to stab her with the oar, her hands were like this on the oar. She, like, stabs, but she hits the sand, and she was, like, putting all her weight on that oar. And I always think how bad that would hurt. I don't know why, but, like, it seems like just the oar on both sides of your hands. This oar is made of wood. For whatever reason, I kind of always pictured this oar as old. And she just stabs, and you would be getting splinters. You're putting, like, all your weight on that, so it's just pressing up against your hands. Old, jagged wooden shit. Like, I don't know why. That always seemed like it would really hurt, though. It just seems really unpleasant. And then, of course, Adrienne King, Alice, goes and grabs Mrs. Voorhees' machete. Comes up, and Mrs. Voorhees got that surprise face, like, I can't believe it's not butter. And off with the head. One fell swoop. One single stroke of the machete. Very silly trope in horror movies, as though there's any machete sharp enough or any person strong enough to just off with the head in one swing with a machete. But doesn't matter. It's a cool kill. And then, of course, in real life, she would have just dropped. But instead, she's there grasping the air, which I've always really enjoyed that shit. While the stump is just spurting blood up out of it. And then she goes into the raft. And now there is one of the best jump scares that I've ever experienced. Of course, Jason jumping out of the lake, which it's funny because it's so out of left field and it doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't. But it sets up for a sequel. And evidently it did that successfully because Friday the 13th Part 2 exists. And it spawned an entire franchise with just that one jump scare, with just that one ending. Did you find the boy? The boy in the lake? Ma'am, we didn't find any boy. And he's still there. Cut to the lake. That ending spawned a whole franchise, which is crazy to think about. I kind of doubt that they really even thought this movie was going to get a sequel. But set it up for one just in case, right? And that they did. And they had multiple sequels. And it went on to become my favorite franchise. My favorite movie franchise of all time. And I really, really wish they would get this legal bullshit over with so they could make another Friday the 13th movie. I'm ready. This is the longest we've ever been without a Friday the 13th movie since the birth of the franchise in 1980, which is crazy to think about. Like, longer than the gap between Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X. That's crazy. Because that was a long-ass gap. But, I mean, 2009 is when we last got a Friday the 13th movie. It's 2021 now. That is insane. So, very unfortunate what's going on with the franchise right now. Really hope it gets over with soon. I really want a new Friday the 13th movie. As a matter of fact, I just dreamt last night kind of a new Friday the 13th movie being announced, which that God, very I'm losing my voice here, but that tells you where my brain is a lot of the time, just dreaming of the day that the next Friday the 13th movie gets announced. But anyway, that's Friday the 13th. For my rating, I think I'm gonna go. This is a personal rating, all right, guys. Understand that I'm not rating this movie on a technical level. I think this is about an 8 for me, and nostalgia makes me want to go even higher. But 9s and 10s are kind of reserved for movies that actually deserve those ratings. And I won't say that Friday the 13th is a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not a 9 or a 10. 8 is about as high as I can go for me personally. I do love this movie. It's a movie that invokes a lot of nostalgic feelings in me. It's a movie that I've loved for a long time. It's become one of my comfort movies. I just watch it whenever. So that's a lot of the reason that I put it down as an 8. But anyway, happy Friday the 13th, guys. I am going to get to watching some Friday the 13th movies. I think starting with this one, actually. And I might just, I don't know. I'm not going to watch 4 or 6 because I watched those both recently. Like this month. Earlier this month, I watched both 4 and 6. Probably going to skip 5. Even though I have a cool story about 5 that I'll probably save for when I review 5. But it's actually really neat. It involves a member of the cast of 5, and just I used to know that person actually, and I didn't even realize they were in Friday the 13th Part 5 until like way later in life. And I don't know them anymore, which sucks because they moved away. But anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna rip through some movies. Happy Friday the 13th, guys. I hope you guys get to stay home and watch Jason movies all friggin' day long, whether it's on Blu-ray, DVD, the Sci-Fi Channel. It doesn't matter as long as you're watching Friday the 13th. And if you have to work, I am sorry. This is damn near a holiday for me. Anyway, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next one.